Hi, I'm Dr. Morbaja, astrodynamicist, space environmentalist, and associate professor of aerospace engineering and engineering mechanics at the University of Texas at Austin.
Hi, I'm Ralph Dinsley, known as Dins. I'm the Executive Director and founder of Northern Space Security.
I'm Michael Maloney, founder of Satellite Design for Recovery.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be what is termed professional advice. The Cold Star Project is proudly presented by the Operational Excellence Society. Cold Star Tech is a supporter of the OPEX Society, and Jason Kanigan is a member of its board of advisors. Talk with us at Cold Star Tech to find out more about the OPEX Society and what we can achieve together in your organization, or just visit opexsociety.org. Thanks for joining us for today's show.
Yeah, so my role is I act as a technical go between SpAARC and all the clients and partners who are engaging with the project, and also will aid in the administration of government contracts and support STEM engagement in initiatives here in Australia.
Welcome back to the Cold Star Project. I'm your host, Jason Kanigan, the founder of this thing, Cold Star Technologies. For now, a data science and process improvement firm. If you're having trouble with documentation, being a learning organization, wanting insights, and to know exactly what your people are really doing rather than the mental movie that's running in your head, you should come talk to us. I'm here with Dr. Ben Kaebe. He is in Australia, but he didn't start there. And so it's going to be really cool to share his story. He's working with something called SpAARC, and we're going to explore that. And so it's late my time, early his. I appreciate you being here, Ben. So
thank you very much.
Thanks
for having me.
You bet. So you have a PhD in aerospace astronautical engineering?
Exactly, yeah. So as you said, I didn't start in Australia. I was born in Berlin, Germany. And in Germany, it's very easy to go to study, and then I went into engineering, also very typical, I guess, for a German, and did engineering science, specializing on fluid mechanics and aerodynamics and also acoustics. I went up to my master's degree and started working first actually in medical engineering and as maintenance engineer for Volkswagen. And then the question how I got to Australia, to answer that in short, is actually very easy to answer. So I met my wife, and third date, she told me she wants to go to Australia. If I'm not want to go with her, then we can stop right now. And I was like, okay, let's do it.
That's leverage.
Yeah, exactly. And then from this point onwards, my wife and I, we tried to find a way into Australia. And then came along an offer from the Australian Defence Force Academy and UNSW Canberra to do my PhD in aerospace engineering with Professor Harold Kleiner and Professor Shauna Byrne. I started in Canberra. We lived there for 3 years. But again, my wife wanted to go to Perth. That was very specific, actually. That was a very specific wish. So therefore, we moved to Perth 2 years ago. And I worked here as well a bit for mining, for FMG for a while, also as a research associate, but always wanted to work for space. And the nice thing is, 2 years ago, the Australian Space Agency was formed, unfortunately in South Australia, not in Western Australia, so therefore I was also a bit hesitant. But then this great opportunity from Fugro called SpAARC, the Space Automation and Artificial Intelligence Robotic Control Complex, came along. They were looking for somebody with a PhD in aerospace/space as a background. And well, the borders were closed. COVID hit. Nobody else. I had no competition, and that's how I got the role, more or less. I mean, it's obviously a bit more than that, but yeah, I mean, that's in a nutshell, I guess.
Okay, well, that's really cool. What? Yeah, I just want to make something clear before we continue to our audience. Dr. Kaebe is speaking for himself in this interview. He's not speaking as an employee of SpAARC. He's not speaking for the state of Western Australia or the country or Fugro or any other organization. So these are just his opinions. I am curious, just for my own edification, the cultural differences that you've noticed, maybe one or two, between where you grew up and where you are now. So Germany and
just a few. I guess there's heaps, but to point out the positive things, in Germany we are very like we live to work, more or less. The work defines us, whereas here in Australia it's the lifestyle. And yeah, you do work you like, obviously, in the best case scenario, and people definitely understand that you have to work, but it's more about like fitting your lifestyle and then finding the right place, so to say. So just and also on top of that, obviously, from my perspective, saying that, I'm fortunate to come from a country where I can choose these things, right? I know there's other people who are not that fortunate. I was able to choose where I want to live and where I want to move, and I know it's not easy for everyone. But yeah, I was fortunate to and I definitely know the worth of being able to choose where I want to be in the world. And Australia is a really nice place. The weather is just perfect. Not so much in Canberra, but Western Australia has a really good, like the whole year is just perfect.
Huh. Okay. Well, as someone, I have not moved nearly as far as you have, but I did move 3,000 miles and from one country to another. They're not too different, but there are differences between Canada and the U.S. So,
well, at least you had English all the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Although they do the y'all thing here, and I have, after 11, 12 years here, I also say y'all. So take that in. So let's I guess lay the scene here. What is going on? Why are these different bodies and states working together to create this complex?
Well, from what I can tell is, so the Australian Space Agency, which was, as I said earlier, formed 2 years ago, they now have to build an ecosystem and a landscape in Australia to enable Australia to play also a part in the big scheme of things in terms of space race and water rush back to the moon and so on. But I mean, maybe I start a bit earlier here for like on behalf of Australia in this case. Obviously, Australia has a long history in space. Just to go back to the moon landing from the States, 1967, the whole communication went to Canberra, actually, to the dish. I mean, the dish was located a bit differently, but close to Canberra, and therefore we had already that connection. In fact, the Deep Space Network has its place. One of the places is in Canberra. So we have a very, very tight connection to NASA already. And also here in Western Australia, we have the new NASA dish, which is the Deep Space Network part for the ESA. So therefore, we do already have a very strong bond to the big players, so to say. Also Canberra and here in Perth as well, we have two very strong universities with space background. So just to say that, and that is obviously, that has happened long before the space agency was formed. And therefore we had already space history in Australia. But well, to come back to the initial question or to the initial point, Australia has formed the space their own space agency, and now they have to come up to speed, and they don't have all like that amount of government buildings like NASA, for example. And therefore, in my opinion, they find ways now to leverage space industry and startups in Australia for them to build these facilities, for them to find a commercial way to run those facilities, and then in the bigger scheme of things, to get a huge ecosystem of space-related facilities. So, and one of those facilities will be SpAARC here in Perth.
Okay. So the idea is to create intellectual capability, I guess, to be able to work on these things. You know, and Australia has been very interested in bringing expertise and developing expertise in space.
Exactly. And also, I mean, with that, you need flight heritage. So let's say you have a launch facility, but you have never used it, and you want to do something for NASA, they won't let you do it, right? So therefore now they have to start speeding up, and they have to start interacting, and commercial partners are more likely, especially when we work together here in Australia, to use those facilities, like such as a launch facility, such as a mission control center, and so on. So therefore, that's the idea, sort of say, to get more and more experience with these things, and then therefore get more credibility once we are stepping up the game. And also, I mean, that was in the news a couple of weeks ago. The ASA has also signed already the Artemis, Artemis Accords. Therefore, there's a very, very strong likelihood that Australia will play a role in the Artemis mission.
Okay, that makes sense. So what is the role of SpAARC? What are the bodies trying to achieve?
Yeah, so let's maybe starting a bit earlier than that.
Yep.
How came Fugro about to build the center? So how was the Australian Space Agency why did they choose Fugro to run this facility? So Fugro in itself is a global company with their headquarters in the Netherlands, and they are a geospatial company doing maintenance and data acquisition for structures mainly. Here in the southern hemisphere, especially here in Australia, they're more focused on oil and gas, so pipeline inspections, oil rig inspections, all submarine. They have big vessels with ROVs on board, and they use that to inspect those assets, submarine. So 2015, with a dip of the oil price, the market collapsed a bit, and because here in Australia oil and gas was the main client, so to say, they had to find a way to mitigate the problem to be relying on only one industry field, and therefore they were looking for other opportunities and or for other ways to do things, and amongst going and inspect also renewable energy assets and so on. Here in Australia, especially in Perth, my boss was looking at, or actually was Fugro Next from the innovation team. They looked for ways to remotely run those operations. So that means putting people from the ship, from the vessel, back to a central location, in this case here in Perth, to do the work they are doing on the ship, which then in the long run, like just to speak for Fugro's benefit here, reduce the size of the ships, for example. It costs much less than let's say you have a 24/7 operation, 5 people for such an operation, you save like up to 15 people just for the operation, plus all the people you need, like cooks and attendants and so on the ship, which are now not on the ship anymore, out of harm's way. Also, because now you can make a smaller ship, you have you don't need that much of fuel anymore, so you get environmentally friendly. So there's lots of benefits, and also obviously it's more cost effective. And then so this was quite a good effort and work. And then now I guess I don't have to point out that we had a little pandemic going around, which again showed how important it is to remotely work. And again, like if you can do these things remotely, that was a big advantage. So now, because of that, the Australian Space Agency was interested in that concept of remotely work, the mission operation, how to do these kind of things. And also with Fugro as such a big company, having somebody who can also like stem this thing from ground up, they granted us they granted us the money for building the center. So now, maybe I should have said what SpAARC means actually. So the center is about remotely operating robotic assets in space to enable, for example, maintenance on satellites or remotely control lunar surface vehicles, or to mitigate the problem of space debris in orbit so that it doesn't collide with anything, something like that. And it's very closely tied or very closely compared with the RCS mission from DARPA, which was run a couple of years back.
Okay, yeah, and so it's a no-brainer. It's an obvious overlap between what Fugro was already doing with the ocean-going stuff and this space idea of automation and that. Yeah.
It's different challenges, though. I mean, if you sit in this control rooms and you see a marine operation with a submarine robot doing something, it looks very spacey. But then there's a huge difference. So, for example, the medium obviously is completely different. And you have in water, you have currents, you have temperature changes, and you have fish swimming around things, and you have algae and stuff like that, which is definitely changing the whole dynamic of the environment. Whereas in space, there's nothing. You go to something, and then there's kilometers and kilometers nothing around you. On the other hand, in space, you have the problem of radiation, you have the problem of temperature and so on. So these are more, let's say, technical engineering parts. And the other thing is, the further away you go from Earth, the more latency you get, obviously, in your control as well. So that's sort of a different side of the problem.
Okay. So how is SpAARC going to work? I guess let's begin with we both know Dr. Gordon Ressler. He's so involved in, his company's called Robots in Space, but he's natural to be talking to about this. So he's been very interested in this. What is the vision for the complex as it's up and running, and it kind of has a flow through of people showing up at its doors, metaphorically, I guess, and going through whatever it is.
So I mean, for that, obviously we have, so the grant itself is now first to establish the complex. That means physically, and so for the next 2 years, we will focus on actually building we will select a building from where we will operate, and this building will have an amount of modular control desks or mission control, like a modular robotic mission control center type of thing. And so this will be one part of that, and this will be located in the CBD in Perth, which will then attract people who, obviously, so Australia is very, very low dense, so that means we have long distances between places, and having something in CBD would be a very big advantage, because we have the big companies in CBD as well, like Woodside and FMG and BHP, for example, from the mining side, who do automation and robotics as well, and so it's people like that. And as far as I know, we have also lots of NASA guys coming through Perth, going to Pilbara.
Hey, this is Jason Kanigan, the host of the show and the founder of Cold Star Technologies. I want to share with you a new idea. This is very exciting. It's a partnership between myself and another fellow who's a former Marine, a space junkie, a guy who has a lot of experience with Ogilvy and marketing, and he's also a junior venture capitalist. And some of you may know that I've been a copywriter myself for 25 years and made a lot of money for myself and clients. And so we are partnering up along with a legal team and junior associates. It's very exciting to be able to do something. Here's the exciting part for you, okay? If you're a founder and you're interested in, hey, where's the venture capital? We see this a lot, right? You need a bunch of stuff to be able to qualify for venture capital, including customers. And in order to get there, you need stuff like branding and teams and a business model and all this stuff. And I find a lot of founders, and you ask yourself this question to tell me the truth, right? Tell yourself the truth. You don't even have to tell anybody else. Do you understand all those things that we just talked about? Or do you just want to build cool stuff? And that is the position where we find a lot of people are in. But look, this project Space Boots that we're looking at here, here's our mission, okay? We're what's called a venture builder. We're seeking to provide venture capital, marketing strategy, and networking for brands, companies, their teams, individuals. Here's the niche, okay? If you're seeking to add value to the 7 space power disciplines as defined by the Chief of Space Operations for the United States Space Force, we want to talk to you. And if you don't know what that is, go to Space Capstone Publications and get the PDF for free. You could buy the hardcover book if you love flipping through catalogs like I do, but the PDF will do, okay? So here's who we're looking for. Pre-seed and seed stage startup companies looking to enter these 7 disciplines, one of them. And we are going to provide the help at this pivotal stage. Most importantly, the storytelling, pitching the big idea. That's what you need help with here, is that positioning, the branding, the storytelling, and that will get you the access. That will get you the stuff you need to get access to that venture capital. We are going to help you craft a winning narrative on this increasingly complex road to funding. We're very excited about this, being able to offer this. It's something that I'd sort of daydreamed about over the last 6 months or so, and suddenly found a partner to be able to fulfill the idea with. If you are in that realm, if you understand what I'm saying and the potential that this is bringing to the table, come talk to us. You can just email me or connect with me on LinkedIn and message me there. Because if you're in one of those disciplines, you should be talking to us about the Space Boots project, the world's first space tech venture builder for the Allied Space Forces. Super excited. Let's get back to the interview.
Have multiple mission control center desks, and these desks we try to design them as modular as possible, so that anyone sort of can go and integrate their architecture and also how they want to run their mission. And we will bring them our experience in mission control and mission operation, and also help them integrating their hardware into our SpAARC network. There will also be 2 other facilities integrated in the SpAARC project already in the initial 2 years. That will be a development center. That means we will a test and development center. People who build robots and don't have the money, for example, to have these expensive facilities, they can come to us and they can test on a for example, Moonyard. They can test their rovers, for example. They can they have little workshops where they can maybe repair when they do their testing, so they don't have to go back to the original place, but they can do this all in a central location, more or less. I mean, that location might not be in CBD though, but at a different location. And the last part will be a training facility. So all these, all the experience we have, and all the experience we will also gather along the way, doing other missions with other partners and other clients, will obviously give us a lot of experience. We will have access to this data stored for as a service for our clients as well. But then then can help them as well if they need operators to train those operators in real scenarios, for example. So we will have a sort of copied mission control center where we can then put trainees through and train them up to the point that they can run real missions.
Oh,
so this is the initial time. Yeah. And then after those two years, we are already connected with quite a few project partners. Unfortunately, I can't tell you too much details. From one partner, I can tell you that's we are partnering with Curtin University. They have the biggest planetary science community south of the hemisphere, and they are building in the moment. So they have a project called BINA, and that project means they design and build Western Australian CubeSats. They will launch them in the next couple of years together with JAXA, with Space BD. And we are working very closely together so that they can then also use our facility to get access to their CubeSat when it comes over Western Australia, so that they can actually track it and communicate with it.
Okay. Ben, who is paying for this then? So you've got this facility, the startup people show up, they want to do their research in that. Where does the funding for that come from?
So the funding comes from the Australian Space Agency as one partner, because they were interested in the space portion of it. But also the state government of Western Australia has put money into this because they see that this asset can be used also for terrestrial applications. So obviously we can copy what we already do with a better facility. Obviously, we want to go then later, obviously, to work with other space agencies or defense and so on. So and we try to make this possible, and also Fugro itself. So Fugro has an own interest, obviously, to run this facility and to have this facility. Not only because we can potentially do the operations we already do and have just more rooms available, so we could do more missions in parallel, but also to gain access. As I said, Fugro looks into ways to not only be reliant on oil and gas anymore, but also to do stuff in space, for example. So that is, I believe, in the next 10 years, definitely something worth considering.
Okay. So the first thing my mind jumps to is the availability of continued funding, politics being what it is. Some party gets in power, they think this is a priority, the next one doesn't. Is the funding guaranteed for some time? Is that something that you know?
As far as I can tell you, we have the funding for the next 2 years, and that's as far as I can tell, guaranteed, tied to milestones, obviously. So we have to provide evidence that we are tracking nicely along the way. But after that, we are already working on, and that's what I meant. I'm already in talk with other project partners and potential customers. But the idea is actually, in the best case scenario, once the facility runs, to have clients who then pay for the service to use our facilities as a middleware, and that's in fact that's one of the ideas, in my opinion, the SA follows, that these facilities at times when there's mission going on and at times when there's no funding coming from the federal government, that these facilities can maintain themselves. So a big portion will come from actually running, in this case, initially terrestrial missions, and then use that money also to maintain and adapt and improve the whole facility.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's wise. And again, this is the beginning of the process. 2 years from now, you're going to have user adoption and a flow through and something to point at and say, hey, yeah, we did that. We developed these capabilities. People are using it.
Exactly. I mean, and one big goal for us is to play a part in the Trailblazer mission. That's the flagship of the Space Agency. And we do our best to be considered for that, obviously. And that would mean that we potentially could directly contribute to the Artemis mission. So the Trailblazer mission is Australia's contribution to Artemis directly. So they want to help, obviously, to build the base on the moon and control assets on the lunar surface. So, and I mean, I think it's easy to see that a complex which can control to space robots, whatever that means, like either floating in space or on a lunar surface, would or should play a part in this game, I guess.
Yeah, and I start thinking about time delays in communication, and that's something I've thought about for years. Like, how do you deal with that? The things need a little bit of AI to be able to figure out, okay, what should I do? Because I don't have 2 seconds or whatever to bounce a signal back and get a decision and stuff like that. So,
yeah. I mean, you have the advantage that there's not much going on the moon or in space. So the time delay, although be a hassle for a lot of things, can be mitigated with really good mission strategies, for example. I mean, that NASA is doing that with a rover on Mars already. They move a centimeter and then they wait and then look, oh, everything's fine, and they move again. But yeah, I mean, we do have internal plans to mitigate those things in terms of AI, for example, machine learning and other strategies. But these are still very, very early stages and can't really disclose what we do.
Right.
But yeah, we definitely think of these things. Yeah. And as you already mentioned, there's only so much you can do technically. You can reduce the latency technically to a minimum.
Right.
From all the network hopping and so on, but you can't be faster than the speed of light. So, and not thinking of any quantum entanglement and so on. So that's not to be out of the box here.
Right. Well, okay. Well, let's talk about your role, Ben, as technical interface manager. So, what does that mean? What is under your purview?
Yeah, so my role is I act as a technical go between SpAARC and all the clients and partners who are engaging with the project, and also will aid in the administration of government contracts and support STEM engagement initiatives here in Australia. So and also hopefully get engaged more and more with people like you to gain more interest from the from public, and then also just I personally want to contage people with my enthusiasm about space, because I think it's the way to go. So I think space is a near future, actually. Don't think it's just in 100 years. I think it's happening now, and people who do things now will see the benefits in a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a really cool role. So how Speaking generally, I guess, you can't go into specifics, I don't think.
Yeah.
But speaking generally, how will you go about, or how will the organization go about picking which projects to support or fund?
Well, I don't think that we will directly fund initially.
Mm-hmm.
I think it will be more, or if then a mutual fund, or we will, or another strategy might be if there's funding available, we can mutually apply for those funding and make a stronger case then. But yeah, I mean, that's part of my role as well. Like if a startup comes along and they want to do something, I can advise them with the experience I already got with the past funding rounds, for example, and help them getting a stronger case, for example, or guarantee that we will help, like we might be clients for their service if they do something interesting, or vice versa.
Okay.
But in the end, I think the benefit we bring, and that is more or less the what people can consider in the future than using us as a middleware, is people don't have to build their own control center.
Right.
So they can sort of come here and only use on demand, and they can then, they don't have to build the whole hardware. And also they don't have to understand the whole CCSDS landscape. They don't have to know who they have to contact at NASA, at ESA, and so on. So obviously I'm building these relationships in the moment so that I can help and our future clients working with us, and we more or less make the other parts happen, let them know how to go through this, give them advice how long it might take to get their asset into space or integrate it in some systems and so on.
Okay, so that really clarifies it for me. So you've been funded to operate this facility, build these buildings, and exist there, and with this control center. And then founders can show up, say, look, I've got this idea, and then you can say, great, let me work with you to help get the funding to operate that. And then if they do want to use the control center, there's going to have to be some sort of time management as to who gets access when, and some priority system of that. So that really makes it clear. So don't expect folks just to show up and have money thrown at you just because you're.
Yeah, and obviously not. And I mean, there will be projects. I mean, space is still very new. There's still a lot of science and research going on. And a lot of development as well, and I guess you know this better than anyone else anyway. But also, and that's the part more or less where we have the terrestrial missions, we also will have, or we want to have access to clients who already are established and who need a facility like us to do their mission, or we can provide the service to do an asset inspection somewhere subsea, for example.
Right.
So this is sort of the whole business idea behind this, is to have something which can maintain itself, and then on top of that, the icing of the cake is then the space portion of it. And ideally, the space portion will be bigger at some point than everything else. I mean, the name SpAARC gives away that space is definitely the actual focus we want to achieve. But we are realistic, and if this is not possible, obviously we try to find ways to make it possible.
Okay, so Dr. Vet, so that was going to be my next question, was who should be approaching you? So that's one category of potential customer, and that's somebody who has got a terrestrial operation going on and they want to use your facilities. Who else should be approaching you, and what should they have in hand when they come to see you?
Well, to make it very simple, a company who already own robotic assets and want to control them remotely to for example, what I said, Fugro itself might be a client, and so more or less, because they own their own robots, they're called ROVs, and they run them remotely, or they can run them remotely, and they could use the facility then to service another client. So they can use the facility, they can do what they already do with their setup. And what they do need to be integrated is they need a robot, obviously. That robot needs to be integrated in our SpAARC network. That means it has to be able to get access to our satellite network somehow, or to the network we have access to a VSAT connection, either by using as well our assets or having an established connection themselves. And then they have to be able to work with us to integrate their controls, the control architecture, also working through our SpAARC network. So I think initially this might also be a bit of a lot of customization from outside. So because there's not really a big standard out there that everyone uses, especially in robotics. There's it seems that ROS and ROS2 are getting more and more interesting for people, but still there's also a lot of homebrew operational systems for robots. So therefore there will be a lot of customization. But in general, maybe in a nutshell, they need a robot, they need a controller for that robot, and the robot needs to be able to integrate it in a wireless network. I think these are the three minimum requirements. And also they need a client to be able to pay for it. So I think that's also important.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that again clarifies things very well. Well, how can people connect with you? What's the best route and find out more about SpAARC?
Well, I mean, I'm very open in LinkedIn to connect to people. I guess just Google my name and then reach out to me. That's always a good idea. And I think you can also put my email address in the description from that interview, and then people can reach out to me if they're interested to learn more.
Fantastic.
Talk about it.
And my guest has been Dr. Ben Kaebe. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, this is Jason Kanigan, the host of the program. Thanks a lot for listening to the Cold Start Project. If you want me to send you new episodes of the Cold Start Project so that you don't have to go hunting around for them or watching YouTube or anything like that, go to this page, coldstartech.com/MSB. That's short for Make Space Boring, which is what we're all about. And drop in your email address there, and I will be able to do that for you. Make Space Boring is another little show that I run. It's a shorter format, quick interviews, and news of the day, and sometimes an update of who I'm meeting and what I'm learning in the space field. It's on the same Cold Start Tech channel. Speaking of which, on the YouTube channel, I can do something I cannot do on the audio-only version, which is add playlists. And so there may be topic area playlists on the YouTube channel that you would be interested in digging into and going down the rabbit hole and learning more about. For example, space law and policy, space situational awareness, the lunar mining and construction and fun stuff like that. So go check that out. That is at coldstartech.com/play. That's the short link to get there. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you soon.